Black Myth Wukong developers Game Science have reportedly banned the promotion of feminism and politics in regards to content creators making content about the game in exchange for an early access game code. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And this was brought to my attention by Andrew Esquire, aka Legal Mindset, a legal analyst. And he posted this on X. Black Myth Wukong explicitly banning feminist propaganda, amongst other things. Thoughts? If you can read the list here, it says, do's, enjoy the game. Don'ts, do not insult other influencers or players. Do not use any offensive language, humor. Do not include politics, violence, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. Do not use trigger words such as quarantine or isolation or COVID-19. Do not discuss content related to China's game industry policies, opinions, news, etc. So obviously this is where I got it from, but there is another report here from Don Parsons over on Medium. And he reports he spoke to a number of content creators on both YouTube and Twitch, indicating that they did indeed receive this from Game Science. And he points to French YouTube channel Xserve, who brought this to his attention, and they shared with him the document that includes what we just went over, and he has a screenshot of the document. So my opinion on this is good news. Obviously, banning feminist propaganda is indeed something that should be done, because feminist propaganda at the end of the day is objectively evil. There is nothing good that comes from feminism or feminist propaganda. It all leads to decline. It is all wrong. It is all immoral. There is nothing good that comes out of feminism whatsoever. I think banning nudity is also a good thing. Don't need to see that in a discussion about the game. As banning politics, I think that is also something that is fine and dandy. There's no reason to be discussing politics in a game review or a game feature or a stream. Maybe a stream is a little bit different when you're just playing the game and you're kind of maybe talking about whatever is happening. So I could see maybe having discussion of that. But obviously, this is an exchange for an actual game key. So I think the assumption is that you're going to be not just streaming the game. You're probably going to be doing a review. You're going to be doing a feature. You're maybe going to be doing some kind of highlighting of the game, maybe doing some boss breakdowns or boss fight guides, or doing some game guides, or something like to that effect, where you're not going to be discussing politics or anything like that. Fetishization, I think that's 100% fine to ban that as well. We don't need to be encouraging the furry movement. I think that's clearly what that is aimed at. So I think that's good. And then other content that instigates negative discourse, that one is probably a little bit iffy, because if you do come away from the game maybe negative, or there's some negatives that you're talking about, that could instigate negative discourse. And I think that is probably where I would draw the line right there, because I think you should be able to tell your opinion. Star Wars Theory, I think, did a really good job about that, where he's like, if I'm going to sign anything like this, I'm going to make it clear that I can express my opinion to the full extent of what it is, and be able to talk about that when it comes to the game. So you should be able to break down things that you don't like in the game, or if you happen to just not like the game at all, you should be able to express that and not have to basically lose your access or whatever it happens to be here that these people are getting, which it looks like it is a game key to play the game early. As far as the quarantine, the COVID stuff, that seems to be specifically China. I don't know why they would bring that up, but whatever, they put that in there. I don't really see anyone talking about that. Maybe some people will, but I feel like, aren't we over with COVID? I guess I did see something from some really like obscure science fiction groups. They're going to be having masks when they're doing their convention in Australia 4 years from now, 2028. So utterly ridiculous. So I guess there is some insanity that could happen with that. But again, I feel like that's not really something you would want to worry about. And then content related to China's game industry practices, etc. I guess I'm kind of fine with that too. especially if you're just trying to talk about the game. Although there might be instances where you might want to talk about that. Obviously, if something is going on, something happens, there's new information coming out about the actual developer or something like that, where they are funding something that is obviously objectionable or immoral or something like that, I think you should be able to talk about that. So I would disagree with that option as well. But as far as like the feminist propaganda, the fetishization, the politics, the violence, the nudity, all of that stuff, I think I'm pretty okay with that. That does seem to be a lot of immorality stuff. Violence, maybe a little bit. Who know? I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about there when it comes to violence. Maybe they're talking about real world, like political violence or something like that when you're discussing this game, because clearly there's violence in the game, right? Like the everything we've seen from it, the trailers, etc. The monkey, the Wukong is going around beating up a bunch of supernatural beings. So I think you'd be fine talking about violence there. I'm pretty much okay with this document. There are probably a little bit things that I would push back on and would not accept. But for the most part, I'm okay with what they have here. Because again, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think that's an utterly ridiculous position to have. It doesn't make any sense because at the end of the day, if you believe that there's free speech for anything, you're literally just advocating that you have the freedom to commit all kinds of heinous evil or say all kinds of heinous evil. And I just don't agree with that. I'm a practicing Catholic, and I don't think that people should be allowed to say all kinds of evil, disgusting things that happen to pop into their mind. Like we have laws about libel, about slander. You can't be yelling fire in a theater, right? Like we have laws against that, and we have laws against that for a reason. We do indeed censor people all the time and censor speech. So it really comes down to whether or not that speech that is being censored is being done on a moral level. And so you have to look at it from, are they censoring this? Is it right to censor this? Or is it wrong to censor this? Is the thing that they're censoring objectively wrong, or is it objectively right? If you're censoring something that is objectively true and right, then what you're doing is wrong. If you're censoring something that is objectively immoral, then that censorship is actually good. That is how I look at these things. So this idea about free speech absolutism I just find it a ridiculous notion. Unfortunately, it is something that has infected the Western psyche. Liberalism has psyoped so many people into buying into that. And I think a lot of people don't even really kind of think about it at all. They just oppose it they pose it on a moral level. They pose censorship on a moral level where they just view being against censorship as morally good, which is, again, it's utterly ridiculous. Doesn't really make any sense. So if you want to read the rest of this article, kind of talk about how these game science developers have been subject to a smear campaign. So this list here kind of makes sense as to why they would have it, because you've seen IGN go after them. You've seen people at the Guardian repeat this without anything. They're obviously the dispute on the translation. I'll go over all of this stuff. The GameSpot video as well that kind of echoes it. And then obviously gamers clearly aren't having any of this stuff. 623,000 followers, most wishlisted at upcoming game according to SteamDB's charts. And then obviously we have this here. 85,277 peak concurrent players just on the benchmark tool, which is non-playable and allows players to check their PC's hardware performance and compatibility when running the game. So literally, that's how many people are just checking out the benchmark tool that they released that is non-playable. So clearly tons of interest in this. And I don't think that this is going to keep people away. I actually think this will probably encourage people to indeed play this more, because they're just like, yes, they're banning politics, they're banning feminist propaganda when it comes to people getting game codes. So likely there isn't a lot of that in the game. It's probably more to do with the politics within the game of whatever Wukong is doing, why he's fighting these supernatural beings, etc. There might be something like that in the game. At least that's what I've kind of got a little bit of that gist, at least from some of the trailers that I've watched. But let me know what you guys make of this. What do you make of this do's and don't list that has been circulating on social media that allegedly comes from game science and was given to a number of YouTube and Twitch content creators in exchange for a game code. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.